Greetings. This is Doc Ock coming to you live and direct from Black Facts Headquarters Central. Doc Ock at noon and 9. Hoping everything's really fine for you today. Let's get this show on the road. We don't have a lot of time to waste. Can't afford to burn no daylight over here. Proverb for today. You cannot build a house for last year's summer. You cannot build a house for last year's summer. Think about it, because that just makes sense. We don't need any explanation on that one. All right. And we got a poem for you today as well, just like we usually do. And the poem for today is entitled Strange Legacies, from out of the book 3,000, it's not 100, 3,000 years of Black poetry. So this book, you find all kinds of poems that Black people have been reciting from around the world throughout history, all the way back at least 3,000 years ago. Strange Legacies. This is by Sterling Brown, who, by the way, was born in 1901. So he was a little bit older than my grandfather. One thing you left us with, Jack Johnson, one thing before they got you. You used to stand there like a man, taking punishment with a golden, spacious grin, confident, inviting Big Jim Jeffries, who was born in. Here I is, big boy, you sees where I was at? Come on in. The water's warm. Thanks, Jack, for that. John Henry with your hammer, John Henry with your steel driver's pride. You taught us that a man could go down like a man, sticking to your hammer till you died, sticking to your hammer till you died. Brother, when beneath the burning sun, the sweat poured down and the breath came thick and the loaded hammer swung like a ton and the heart grew sick. You had what we need now, John. Help us get it. So if we go down, have to go down, we go like you, brother man, natural men. Old nameless couple in Red River bottom who have seen floods gutting out your best loam, and the boll weevil will chase you out of your hard-earned home. Have seen the drought parch your green fields, and the cholera stretch your porkers out dead. Have seen year after year the always a little in the lead. Even you said that which we need now in our time of fear. Routed your own deep misery and dread, muttering beneath an unfriendly sky. Guess I'll give it one more try. Guess we'll give it one more try. Strange legacies. Strange indeed. But if you Black, it's all about a natural fact. That's right. Like Miles Davis said at the end of his Jack Johnson album, I'm Black. They never let me forget. I'm Black, all right. I'll never let them forget. That's an extra proverb. I just threw one in for you. That's a freebie. All right. Meanwhile, let's get on with the getting on. We're going to try to finish up the intro to our book, Freedom Challenge, Book of the Week. Okay. This is for the meek and it's for the mild, and it could even be wild. Okay. We don't know exactly how you're styled, but hopefully we'll speak to your style right here as we take you on this last mile through the intro. Is this a book just for African Americans? Absolutely not. As far as I know, it is the first collection of essays written entirely by homeschooling parents and children of any color. There are a few other excellent homeschooling books, which include essays by parents and or children. The essayists address a myriad of classic homeschooling issues, relevant, and informative for people of any ethnic background, such as socialization. That's a big one. Everybody always asks about socialization, how they're going to be socialized real good, as a matter of fact. Learning from experts in a specific subject instead of from school teachers. Learning to read with and without parental instruction, doing science. I always hope that experienced white homeschoolers by the thousands will read this book. Some of the essays shed a bright light on race relations within the homeschooling movement, and they made it clear that we all have a lot to learn about the consequences of our attitudes and actions if we make a sincere effort to listen and understand. Certainly, it will be easier for us to stop being part of the problem that homeschoolers of color face. In other words, Black homeschoolers, because that's actually what we're talking about here. You may have a particular educational concern that is not discussed much in these pages. For instance, perhaps your children have been labeled dyslexic and you are wondering about the pros, cons, and possible methods of homeschooling them. Though this book doesn't address every homeschooling issue in detail, there's a good chance that some other homeschooling literature will speak to any concern you might have. White people do still form the vast majority of the homeschooling movement. So perhaps it's inevitable that some of your inspiration and ideas will come from their stories. I highly recommend Growing Without Schooling magazine because it offers an in-depth autobiographical letters from readers on almost every imaginable aspect of homeschooling, including single-parent homeschooling, homeschooling children with various labels, including ADD and ADHD, educating spouses and relatives about homeschooling, homeschooling as African Americans, Asians, and Latinos, and finding ways to give children safe access to the adult world. See the resource listing in Appendix 3 for more information on this and other recommended books and magazines. One particular concern, which isn't discussed much in this book, is homeschooling children who have been labeled ADD, Attention Deficit Disordered. Again, Growing Without Schooling and other publications address this issue. But I also wanted to mention that one of the original writers for this book, Monica Satterwhite, had wonderful success removing her so-called ADD future menace to society son from school. Unfortunately, she felt forced by family circumstances to return him to school, and therefore, despite my pleas, felt unqualified to contribute an essay. But in an early letter, she wrote this: when Sean was in kindergarten, I was receiving at least one call a week from his school telling me that my 5-year-old was a menace to society. After getting through that year, we began to experience the disaster of the public school system. 2 months into the school year, Sean's teacher informed us that Sean was going to fail the first grade and that he needed, make sure to flip the page, right? Special ed. I felt that even if he did improve, his teacher had already made her judgment and that he would not be treated fairly. Well, I removed him from there, and next came Catholic school. There I was told that Sean had attention deficit disorder and we should put him on Ritalin. He was also given an IQ test, and we discovered that he had one of the highest scores in the whole school. Imagine that. Well, we medicated our children and sent him away for the nuns to handle him. This went fairly well until about the 3rd grade. He began to get into fights and all types of trouble as he'd walk home from school. While looking for yet another school to put him in, I came across a book by a man named Jawanza Kunjufu called The Conspiracy to Destroy Black Boys. After reading that, I was convinced that no school could ever treat him fairly or teach him the way he needed to be taught. Monica went on to explain how they decided to try homeschooling and concluded her letter by saying, it definitely has not been easy, but God has blessed us. Sean no longer takes Ritalin. He's a self-proclaimed vegetarian, and he's doing great work. When Sean did return to school, he was stronger and better able to cope. It was nothing like the public school situation we had before. Monica says, I would like to think that the increased confidence and self-esteem that he acquired through homeschooling contributed to the change. By the way, he made honor roll twice this year, his first time ever. I know homeschooling works, and if I could, I'd do it all over again. The territory of unschooling is wide, welcoming, unrushed, and forgiving. Ironically, though, the entry gate may seem narrow and forbidding. Many families are able to decide to homeschool because they feel qualified to do so. One or both parents has a college degree, and surprisingly often a school teaching background. They begin in a fairly unimaginative school-at-home way, with the parent teachers modeling their procedures after their own memories of school, buying or creating a conventional academic curriculum, giving assignments and leading daily lessons, confident that their own academic background will ensure a proper education for their children. The real truth dawns on them some months later. A parent's academic background is only one of many factors that influence homeschooling success. Certainly, it's less important than a determination to help their children knock on doors, make phone calls, read bulletin boards, write letters, use the library, and otherwise access learning opportunities. In fact, the more a parent clings to a sense of importance and authority due to her own academic background, the more likely she is to blindly get in her children's way, pompously cramming her own skills down their gullets and failing to see the seeds of their individual curiosities. And so, in many homeschooling families, school at home gives way to a more radical, exciting, and sustainable educational process in which the parent backs off and offers support rather than heavy-handed direction. Children are encouraged to follow their own interests in their own way. And since this often leads them out of their parents' realm of knowledge, the family quickly finds out just how unnecessary is parental academic expertise. There are always other teachers to be found in the form of neighbors, community-based classes, library books, online forums, and of course, relatives. All a parent really needs to homeschool successfully, an African-American father pointed out to me, is the motivation of love. The stronger and truer the love, the better the parents will see their children's genius, and the more enthusiastically they'll help their children find other situations where they can blossom. None of this requires full-time attention or damaging self-sacrifice. In many homeschooling families, teenagers and older children educate themselves while both parents hold regular jobs. In fact, judging by the hundreds of letters I've received from unschooling teenagers, I would go so far as to say that when older children or teenagers want badly enough to educate themselves, they already have all they need. Even if their parents can offer no more support than to give permission to unschool, they can succeed. Even without parental help, determined children can seek out all sorts of mentors, guides, and learning situations. And many, of course, use library books, textbooks, computers, or other resources to teach themselves. Most younger children do need somewhat more adult guidance, though, as the essays in this book demonstrate, not so much that their parents must necessarily give up their own interests or careers. Of course, it helps, not just for homeschooling, but for all of life, to have or build a strong community. Maya Gunard learns not only from her parents, but also from numerous other adults who live in her houseboat neighborhood. The Clough's neighbors built a barn for them, and Adam Clough helped. Later, when those neighbors moved to Costa Rica, they invited Adam to come stay with them. Sunshine Lewis and her brothers learn about astronomy, Spanish, architecture, and chess from adult friends of their family. Erin Tekur has special lessons with her aunt once a week. Detra Rose Hood has worked with other African-American homeschooling families, despite their ideological differences, to set up science classes taught by volunteer experts, which her son, Tunu, enjoys. Anyway, the problem with all of this comes at the beginning, that gate into the land of homeschooling, which many people perceive as narrow and formidable. with the false confidence provided by a background of academic success, middle-class, college-educated parents at least have the guts to walk through that gate, after which they embark on an unexpected adventure and discover true education. Conversely, working-class families without college backgrounds often lack the confidence to walk through the gate in the first place. School officials, relatives, spouses, even children can shatter frail hopes when they accuse you. You homeschool your children? Didn't you drop out of high school? Don't you remember how badly you did in history and science? You never even took algebra. Your spelling is atrocious. Often, I believe parents who would have no trouble with the real work of homeschooling never even consider it as an option, simply because they've been thoroughly indoctrinated by the school system to believe that A, they are stupid, and B, without academic success, they have no business homeschooling their own children. The sooner these lies are blasted and the vicious cycle halted, the smarter and happier this world will become. Now, I'm not really paraphrasing it. I'm reading this from the book. Okay, so this might sound a lot like me. If you know me, this might sound like me, but this is not me. This is a white woman. Okay, but she's speaking for me and through me, because I don't have any disagreements with what she's saying here. This is all right on point. And I have never read this introduction before that I recall. You know, I might not have my original book. I think this is one I bought later. So sometime later. So I don't have the original one I bought. So maybe I did read this and I marked it all up. But usually I mark up a book if I read it. So let's finish up here. I think back to my day as guest rabble rouser at Garfield High School. Michael would be around 20 years old by now, and I wonder where he is. It's too late for him to quit high school, but many of us have learned that it's possible to unschool at any age. To detoxify your mind, soul, and self-esteem from its many years of institutionalized battering, to unlearn the lies. So I hope that he and other adults might still discover this book and use it as a stepping stone to greater freedom, joy, and power in the continuation of their lifelong educations. And of course, I pray that families, children, and teenagers of all colors and backgrounds will not just read the book, but use this book. As a Caucasian committed to educational freedom and excellence, my deepest motive for editing this book is hope for a brighter world for all of us. Young people who do not have to sacrifice themselves to unimaginative busy work and a standardized educational agenda can more likely flourish, develop their unique talents and voices, and give the gift of themselves to the world, their poetry, their scientific discoveries, their buildings, their music, their inventions, their autobiographies. It's a blessing each month to receive my favorite unschooling magazines in the mail and to read letters and essays describing children's vastly diverse, impassioned lives. Even just knowing about each of these children makes my own world bigger and more beautiful. And as they grow up and develop further, we all reap rewards. What a much greater gift to the world it will be when children of all cultural backgrounds and races grow up free from school's narrow shaping and instead to their own unique natures. Now, I've already gone over my time, so I can't afford to do a whole lot with the wrap up here. All I can say is this is Doc Ock signing out. And last but not least, in terms of what she just said there, okay, gift to the world. She talked about our children being able to offer their gifts to the world. Well, here's what I'm going to do right now. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to turn the lights off. And by the way, these lights were invented by Thomas Edison, who was a homeschooler. Why? Because he couldn't make it in regular school. Peace out.